Welcome to The Point with Mick Rich. God, what another exciting week we have going on. The impeachment with the president, things rolling and going on Capitol Hill. But I want to talk today a little bit, not a little bit, but a lot about energy. And what we're going to be talking about in this first segment is what I call is elitists masquerading as environmentalists. And you may ask, what does that actually look like? What am I talking about? And a prime example is that our good buddy Joe Biden and his climate czar, John Kerry, flies to Iceland to accept an Arctic Circle award for his work for the environment, for global warming. And first of all, I want to say, when we talk about elites, you know you're not an elite when you don't get the title czar. Right? Only elites get the title czar, as if they know that much more than we do. The second one is that John Kerry flew to Iceland on a private jet. And I have to say, not only was it his private jet, but I assume that it was his wife's private jet. She let him take instead of, like in our household, maybe I'll go to Marion and say, hey, honey, can I get the keys to the car? I need to go to the grocery store. I haven't put gas in my car lately, type thing. Well, for him, it's, honey, can I borrow the keys to the jet? So he's flying to Iceland and back on a private jet. Now think about this he's picking up an award for climate change, and he's flying out there in a private jet. And then the question comes up and I thought this was just so cool, his response, because it really points out to all of us just what he thinks about us. And what he said was, if you offset your carbon, it's the only choice for somebody like me who is traveling the world to win this battle. Somebody like him, which he's making it very clear, not like you. The second one is he's saying, traveling the world to win this battle. For 20 years, all I've heard John Kerry say is, we've lost the war. But also, it's not just John Kerry. It's also my good buddy Leo. Everybody's good buddy Leo. That's Leonardo DiCaprio. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. And and I thought this was interesting, he was awarded an environmental award, from what I could gather, in New York. And he flew from Cannes, France to New York, pick up the award, have a party, and then fly back, all on a private jet. But this pales in comparison for him and his buddies back in, I think it was 2013. They flew from Sydney, Australia to, what was it? It was Las Vegas, Nevada. So they celebrated New Year's in Sydney, hopped on a private chartered 747. They all flew from there, from Australia to Nevada, so they could experience 2 New Year's Eves in a 24-hour period. This is what I'm talking about, elitists masquerading as environmentalists. They're just plain elitist. They're making it clear that you don't fall in this mix. And I tell you what, it amazes me. And when they talk about carbon offsets, this is interesting. I want to share with you just what a carbon offset is. Finding a forest that has not yet been harvested, then it may or may not already be protected. That doesn't make a difference. But whoever's the agency or organization, they buy that forest, say we're going to keep it, but it may be already kept. It's like we're going to go buy forest, acreage from the national parks. That's already protected, but they get credit for it. Then what they do is they ensure that it's not harvested, then they sell the carbon credits. So I want to share with you that when I was in the 6th grade, Mrs. Givens would punish us, if we got into trouble, and I did on a few occasions. I was a wild, crazy 6th grade. Good from, kindergarten to 5th and maybe in high school, but a little crazy between the 6th and the 8th grade. She would make us go through the playground and pick up rocks. And so she gave us a trash can, we'd pick them up. Well, it didn't take us long to figure out that we dump all the rocks in the same spot. Then we go back and pick up those rocks. And then so, Mrs. Gibbons, here's our rocks. Well, the environmentalists are doing the same thing. They're going, finding stuff that's already there, they're buying it up, then they're selling the carbon credits, saying, oh, what good people we are, just like John Kerry, and my good buddy, your good buddy, everybody's good buddy, Leo. But the guys that amazed me the most was the Nature Conservancy. These are the ones that are out there and saying, oh my gosh, you know, we are the ones that are caretaker of the environment because those guys over there are just plain atrocious. So, and I was, unbeknownst to me when I read this article, and this came from Bloomberg, this was the Nature Conservancy actually had some oil property down in the Permian Basin. Not only were they drilling oil for oil and producing oil, they were sucking out the oil from the surrounding property owners. So they're you know, call it what you want. And then on top of it all, they just completely ignored the impact to the prairie chicken. I go, how, you know, only an environmentalist can do this. And what I call them is a capitalist masquerading as an environmentalist. But also on top of it, they have gone in and bought forest around some surrounding drinking water reservoirs, lakes out in the Northeast. They bought the forest from the communities and said, we're going to protect that. That ground, that land was already protected. So they buy the land, then they turn around and sell the carbon credits. And then I guess they all go to, then they have parties. They have parties all over, maybe Iceland, down in Cairns, God knows where else, and have huge parties. And the money goes to the people at the top, and they all give each other awards. There was an organization I would consider joining, and they would actually give awards to each other. And then they would then highlight the awards that they received as marketing effort. I wasn't going to be part of that. So then the question comes up is, what, you know, so we have elites masquerading as environmentalists. We have capitalists masquerading as environmentalists. And then you must be asking, well, what costume did I get to wear? What do I get to be? And that's why I'm doing this program. Because I'm going to tell you just the way it is. They can't be doing what they're doing without finding a chump. And I hate to tell you this. You're the chump. What they're doing is somebody's got to pay it, and it's you. You're paying it with higher energy prices. You're paying it with higher electrical rates. And a prime example was New Mexico and PNM. And what amazed me was that I was at a luncheon, and, well, first of all, Governor Richardson enacted mandates for 20% or 25% renewables for electrical generation. PNM was celebrating this. They were down at a luncheon I was at. They said, man, not only do we have the lowest electrical rates in the surrounding states, but now we've got a 20-25% mandate. We're going to have renewables. Not only do we have lower rates, but we're now going to be the green energy producers. I'm thinking to myself, how long will it take before our rates are uncompetitive? Not long. 3 years ago, I was at an AED, Albuquerque Economic Development Board meeting. PNM came there and said, we want you to support us. We want lower rates to be able to bring companies in here to come to New Mexico, and we're going to give them lower rates. What they didn't say was, because of the renewables, our electrical rates have climbed. So what's happening? I voted against it. That measure passed. PNM got that. We are now, PNM, offering lower rates to people from out of state. These are the elites. Then just recently, in the other days, then PNM is making record profits based on high cost of electrical generation. That's the renewables that you and I are supported. P&M just sold out. The folks at the very top, the elites of P&M, got huge bonuses. The people at the very bottom, the low income, now they're saying we need to bail them out. So we're going to bail out the guys at the bottom. We're going to give huge bonuses to the people at the top. We're going to give huge bonuses to the shareholders. Somebody has got to be a chump in this, and it's you. And that's why I've got this program, is we can stop it. You can write to your senators, your state senators, your state reps, and say this is unacceptable. We need to have the lowest electrical rates no matter what. I am done subsidizing these elites masquerading as environmentalists. They're no more environmentalists than you and I. That's what it's about. And I am passionate about it. I'm excited about it. And it's always fun to poke fun at the guys at the top. We all remember growing up about the king has no clothes. And it took a little kid to point out the king has no clothes. That's what you and I are going to be doing. We're going to point out and say, you're buck naked. And I'm Mick Rich. Thanks for tuning in today. Have a great morning.
Ramos, rise and fire. He's fouled.
You know, he used to coach for Del Norte. And
here's Voss all the way with the finish. He'll get the behind the back of the dribble. Trying to go up with the right hand. He changed hands in midair and hotting it, sent it away. Wynn doing a really good job denying Chavez. DC hasn't got the ball. Oh, Yeku! Oh! Working against Watson. Oh, look at the spin move.
Ball's loose. DJ Bustos brings it up. Barnes Tompkins, alley-oop. How about it? That was redunculous.
Turnover. Cable to the big fella might try to jam one home.
Welcome back to The Point with Mick Rich. I'm here with my good buddy, Ryan Davis with Marion Oil. And Ryan, I didn't get it on the screen here soon enough, but you are also the current president of the International Petroleum Association in New Mexico.
The Independent Petroleum Association.
Oh, independent,
of New
got
Mexico.
it.
Yes, I'm the current board president for IPNM.
Okay, were you ever in a fraternity?
No, sir, I was not. I went to New Mexico Tech, so
okay.
there were no fraternities.
Okay, I went to Oregon State, and again, I wasn't a member of the fraternity. We were always called GDIs, right?
Okay.
You know, so GD independent. So,
yeah.
But again, Marion Oil, great company. You guys are located up in the Farmington area.
Correct. Yeah, third generation family-owned and operated oil and gas company out of Farmington, New Mexico.
So I've been to your office, been to the office up there. Nice offices.
Yes, sir.
Sat down with T. Greg over there, T. Greg Marion.
Yes, sir.
Good guy, like him.
Yes, he is a good guy. Great family.
Great, yeah, that's what I see. So, wanted to talk a little bit. A lot of our viewers don't really have an understanding. They hear about the Permian Basin. They know oil's being produced. They're figuring that things are as blowing and going, that the northwest New Mexico is just like southeast New Mexico. And having lived up there, worked up there for on and off over the decades, you want to fill in our viewers the difference?
Yeah, for sure. You know, just start off, you got northwest, you got southeast, you got the San Juan Basin in the northwest, you've got the Permian in the southeast. And, you know, they're very different in a lot of different ways, but I think for today's conversation, you know, the main differences to point out, Permian is primarily an oil producing basin. In fact, you know, and it covers the southeast part of New Mexico and goes into West Texas. The San Juan Basin in the northwest is primarily a natural gas producing basin. And not to say that there isn't oil production up there, but the primary production is natural gas. So while things are, you know, very busy in the Permian due to decent oil prices, or they have been up until there was a commodity crash with COVID-19. Things in the San Juan Basin have been kind of depressed for, you know, the last decade or so. You know, we had really the biggest commodity crash in the 2008-2009 era. And we've been dealing with low gas prices really this entire time, and it's been up and down. But with that, you know, most of the activity in the basin is just keeping existing production online, not a lot of new development occurring.
So just so our viewers know, when you talk about existing production, new production, what you're talking about is existing wells, not drilling new wells.
Correct, yeah.
And then the other item to talk that I understood, took me a while to figure out, was up in northwest New Mexico, the main product you're working for, drilling for, producing is natural gas. Southeast, it's mainly oil, with natural gas is kind of along for the ride.
Yes, sir. We call that associated natural gas. But yeah, so your target is oil, but with that oil comes some gas. And so interesting enough, just to, you know, the San Juan Basin being the gas producing basin of the state, the Permian outproduced the San Juan, or began to in around 2017, 2018. So that associated gas is significant. It has also led to the gas price, you know, continuing to be low.
And then when we're talking about gas, when we're talking about it, is methane's a natural gas, but also at the same time, some of it leaks out, and there's issues. We've been reading about it. It's been in the headlines. Methane's escaping. It's a greenhouse gas. So what are the sources for methane?
Okay, so I guess for the Northwest, because that's primarily, that's where Marion Oil and Gas primarily operates, is in the San Juan Basin. We also operate in Colorado and Wyoming. But talking about the San Juan Basin, you know, we have, our economy is really built around energy extraction. We've got mining, we've got power generation, we've got oil and gas. But if you look at the methane emissions, there's, you know, emissions attributable to all those sectors that I just mentioned. But we've also got just the natural outcrops that surround the basin. And so we've got coal in the San Juan, and it's actually been mined, and that coal's been used for power generation, as well as being developed as coal bed methane in the oil and gas sector.
So for our viewers to understand that, when we talk about this, is that when you're in Farmington and you're out in the open, you can actually see the strata working at an angle, and in one of those stratas is coal.
Correct.
And they open mine coal down to a certain level. But as the coal goes into the ground, then you drill down to get the methane.
Correct.
But where that coal seam comes out and surfaces naturally, the methane just normally seeps right
Correct.
out of that.
Yeah, natural, you know, seep from that outcrop. So
just like oil used to seep out of the ground down in the
yeah.
Permian Basin.
Yeah, that's how it started. Surface geology. You know, you go look at the outcrops and places where you've got natural seeps, and that was, you know, the original way of identifying a basin and places to develop oil and gas.
So what do you guys do? What's the oil and gas industry doing to eliminate, minimize methane?
So I would say that there's been a lot of effort, and really to start off with, I want to mention the EPA Gas Star program. It was a voluntary program for operators to collaborate on reduction strategies, and a lot of the strategies that came out of the Natural Gas Star program ended up being implemented in EPA regulations under Quad O and Quad OA, and so. You know, the industry took a good effort to voluntarily reduce emissions early on, and something that I think is worth mentioning right now with the growth in the Permian and the increased development, we've seen a decrease in methane emissions across the state, even with the increased production levels.
Right, and one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that when there's one or two productions of whatever we want to talk about, power plants, dairy farms, hog farms, there's one or two, not much of environmental impact.
Right.
When you start adding, then all of a sudden it gets to a certain point and you go, oh my gosh, we got a problem here. Now it's time to address it. You guys are working at it. The state, the legislature's poking you guys along the way too, I take it.
Yeah, Governor Lujan, or Michelle Lujan Grisham issued an executive order wanting the New Mexico Environment Department and the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department to secure reductions in the oil and gas sector.
Right, but they should be looking, and I'm not trying to poke, you know, to poke my finger at other industries. But I do believe that if we say methane isn't, we need to control it, regulate it, manage it so it doesn't get out in the environment, then we need to do that across the board. Maybe different regs for different industries, whether it's, and I'm not going to, you know, whether it's dairy, whether it's other items that are creating methane, that they all take the time and the state manages it, not just pick one. Right. And I believe that, and you can vary regulations depending on the industry, but deal with it across the board. But also at the same time, the question I have is, I go out, and I'm, especially in southeast New Mexico, I'm out there, and you see the pipelines going over everywhere on the surface. You look at just the scarring of the land. I look at natural gas, the pipelines that go across the state. They put the pipelines in, they reblade the land, they return it back to where it's at, then they do revegetation. I don't see that happening in the oil and gas industry. Do you guys do that?
We do, and you know, my experience again is in the San Juan Basin,
right.
So there are some differences. We are a very, you know, dry climate, so revegetation can be challenging in some instances, but we're held to standards through the Bureau of Land Management and through the Oil Conservation Division to reclaim and restore our pipeline right-of-ways and well sites that we plug and abandon. But there are requirements for us to do that. We have to do interim reclamation for the Bureau of Land Management, where we go shrink the pad. You know, we do the initial drilling, and then we will shrink the pad down to the minimal footprint necessary to operate that well. But that's part of, you know, the reclamation efforts that we go through.
Okay, and then we talked about treating all industries. You know, we talk about treating people alike. We treat people the same respect for everybody. I look at it when we talk about environmental issues, but also on revenue. I do know that oil and gas provides a huge amount of revenue for the state.
Yes, sir.
But from what I can gather, not solar, not wind. Correct. Is that correct?
Yeah, you know, I can't say I'm super well versed in that arena, but you know, some of the research that I've done seems to indicate that, you know, it's kind of a net zero with, you know, there's so many incentives for renewable energy that it's a net zero to the state in terms of revenue generated.
So it just real quick, we're going to have to wrap this segment up, but I'm saying is, so the oil and gas industry provides a huge amount of revenue to the state, and a lot of revenue of the state goes to the film industry. So do you guys in the oil and gas industry, does the state or Hollywood issue you those gift cards to go see movies for free? I mean, you're covering their costs. You're doing all these things for them, Brian. Are they saying, do they hold like parties for you guys and say, thanks for the revenue, thanks for the money?
Well, I haven't got my card and I haven't got an invite, so I don't think so.
Okay, Ryan, thank you very much. Look forward to the next segment.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's a sweep. Cutting to the middle of the field in some room. A move at the 20 and all the way. Touchdown.
Cleveland tonight sputtered at times, but neat. When they got it going, just like right there. To the 5, touchdown Cleveland. Down in 10 here. Play action, looking, throws it out deep, has a man out there, ball is caught. To the 10, to the house, and just like that, the Cleveland Storm answer.
Johnson, and now it's sent back post, and that is dangerous. It's by everyone, and then it's headed in. And so a misclearance.
They're going to give it. There goes Thompson trying to turn the corner and does. Thompson at the 15, 10, 5. Waiting for the call. Touchdown, Mayfield Trojans.
Robertson will push it to Hobart on the far side. Tipped over the double block. Pancaked off the floor beautifully by Gonzalez Sanchez, and we're still going. Here's Hobart. She'll go over the double block. Lucero. Jones will send it. Tough set. Lucero has to get it over. Robertson. She'll push it over the block. Save. The left-handed save there by Lucero. Here's Jones. She'll have a swing. Yes. McIntosh. Excuse me, at the front.
Stepping up in the pocket and moving, and now to the 5 and diving towards the end zone and in.
Oh man, this beat is crazy.
Hobart. Jones. She'll set Mack for the championship. Yes! 5 in a row. La Cueva is the city's best yet again.
Maybe not getting the reps he needed at quarterback. He's a wide open guy.
There's a big move by Rodriguez. Look out as he's down the sideline. A
Trouble.
cut, shot out of a cannon. Ivan Rodriguez, he's got all the speed. Can he break away inside the 10 to
And
the
he's gonna
5
make it.
and in? Touchdown.
Welcome back to The Point with Mick Rich. I'm here with my good buddy, Ryan Davis, with Operations Manager with Marion Oil, as well as the current President of the Board for the Independent Independent Petroleum Association. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. That's a mouthful. Independent Petroleum Association of New Mexico, IPA.
Of New Mexico, and I take it you are of New Mexico, of a national organization.
Yeah, IPNM's a state trade organization, but IPAA is kind of the national independent trade organization.
Okay, good. So we're looking at it. Michelle, our governor, our good buddy, or your good buddy, somebody's good buddy, up in Santa Fe. The governor is saying she's got her sights on oil and gas. I'm thinking that as a business owner, before I give up a market, I always develop a new one before I give up one.
Right.
It looks like to me that the governor's giving up one before we've got a new one, which is always kind of interesting. So I'm looking at this as, where do you see the oil and gas industry in New Mexico going?
So, I think to start that off, for me, just to give my perspective, I think that oil and gas is very important for the state and for our country for many reasons. For our state, it's a big part of our budget.
Right.
Oil and natural gas development generate a lot of revenue for the state, and without that, I think there's going to be a big hole in the state's budget. But on a kind of higher level there, I think there's a disconnect between what oil and gas development does and what it means for most people in their daily lives. Oil and natural gas production are the reason that we have the quality of life and the modern convenience that each and every one of us enjoy on a daily basis. So I think it's important there to talk about kind of what the future of it is, and at least for New Mexico. I think just in my career, I've seen a tremendous change or shift in the overall development strategy. The conventional way of developing oil and gas was with vertical wells, and that has changed over time with the combination of horizontal drilling and multi-stage hydraulic fracturing, and neither one of those are really new technologies.
Right.
They've been done in the past. They've been done for decades, and they're both safe practices. But what's new is they're being put together, and so the way we're developing oil and gas, in today's time is utilizing that horizontal drilling.
But as we talk about that, a lot of people don't understand is that and a lot of people understand we use groundwater in New Mexico. So they say you're fracturing the ground, which allows oil to get into the aquifer, to the water that we use for agriculture, for drinking water. But really what we're talking about is that you're thousands of feet below the aquifer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
right.
In most cases, a mile or so below the
right.
The
and
surface.
We're talking about not just gravel between the two, but we're talking rock between that area. So we talk about but the state is saying, and I don't get this is so what is oil and gas doing to get the message out there that we have continued generations of being responsible, providing competitive energy for to allow people to have a great standard of living. We're not using, obviously your oil and gas, not coal.
Right.
But you're doing all of these things. The state's saying we want to pull away. I'm looking at saying before we pull away from oil and gas, let's use the resources that we have and work for those others. And what amazes me is that what I'm seeing is that we're saying we're going to go to batteries. Well, first of all, solar plants take up square miles of ground for energy production.
Yes, sir.
Where you guys are down to an acre, small percentage of that for the same amount of energy. But then the last item is that I see the promises that people are going to batteries, saying batteries great. I'm saying batteries are awful with the impact to the environment for making batteries, pulling up the elements to make batteries. I'm looking at the hydrogen.
Right.
And I'm saying greatest source of hydrogen is natural gas. And if you look at hydrogen cells, those, so tell me, you know a little bit more than you know a lot more than I do about this.
Well, it's interesting, but what I would say is, I've always, when you look at our energy strategy, or let's just take transportation as an example. When we look at that, I think you need to look at the full life cycle, to get the overall impact to the environment. And I think you hit on the point that batteries have some environmental issues from mining, and also on the other end of that, recycling those batteries once we get to the end of life. But what I find interesting is hydrogen. As a solution for decarbonizing transportation. Coincidentally, Marion Oil and Gas, we have invested in a company that's here locally, here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Biotech is the name of the company, sorry. And they are using steam reformation, taking natural gas and reforming it into hydrogen. And I think when you look at that, when you take hydrogen and you try to apply it to the transportation sector, I've heard people say hydrogen is to electric as diesel is to gasoline.
Right.
And I've always thought, and this is just my opinion, but we need an all of the above type approach when it comes to looking at where we get our energy. And hydrogen really does seem promising in my mind, because it's one of the most abundant elements in the universe, and but the issue with that is it doesn't stand by itself. So we need to be able to get hydrogen. When we consume hydrogen in a fuel cell or through combustion, the byproduct is water.
Right.
So you have a zero emission type vehicle, and hydrogen in terms of transportation. Really you can look at it and it's the same electric vehicle.
Right.
But instead of batteries, you've got a hydrogen fuel cell and a hydrogen tank. And so there's a lot of advantages there. Hydrogen has the energy density advantage. So, if you fill a vehicle up with hydrogen, you've got a lot longer range that you can run. Filling up a hydrogen vehicle is very similar to what we're used to. You pull up to a filling station and it takes 3 or 4 minutes to fill up your tank, and you're on your way.
Right.
Versus charging an electric vehicle
For a long period of time.
for
right?
yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
For somebody that drives his car to empty, right? Because I'm saying I got a lot going on. I just don't hate spending time at the gas station.
Yes, sir.
I can't imagine having to say, okay, Mick, just wait another hour and you're good to go.
Right.
But when we talk about this hydrogen, a couple of things that just amazes me, and maybe our viewers don't realize this, we originally went with battery-powered buses for our awful art bus system on Central, and that was a catastrophe. Right. Then they turned around, they went with diesel. And what amazed me, Ryan, was right there at and I built it for P&M, or at that time was P&M, now it's the gas company in New Mexico, or whatever it is now.
Right.
But we put in a compressing station to compress natural gas for the buses. So the buses would run on cleaner burning natural gas. I'm saying, and it ties right in what you're talking about, is if we have that at the at the bus station there on Yale, there's no reason why we can't do the same thing and convert the natural gas that's coming in there to hydrogen, and then have buses that run on hydrogen.
Yes, sir. And I think, you know, I mentioned Biotech earlier, and I think when you look at a comparison, I mentioned the comparison of hydrogen to electric versus diesel to gas. You know, in a heavy payload or a high range type application, hydrogen really seems to make sense. But I think when you're looking at the comparison there, it really comes down to the efficiency and ultimately, you know, what your goal is. And if your goal is to decarbonize transportation, hydrogen makes a lot of sense. I think in this instance, as you mentioned, application of Biotech technology would allow for one of their units to be installed there. And what you do is you eliminate the transportation piece of the hydrogen, which really increases the efficiency of hydrogen.
So what you're talking about here, not to paraphrase or put words in anybody's mouth, what we're saying is the oil and gas industry provides energy and cash for our state, our budget. What's the future? The future would be is we could be a leader not just for the country, but for the world, converting over and saying, this is how you can have renewable energy, this is how you can have clean energy, have a better standard of living, a cleaner environment, utilizing the same industries we have, and ideally down the road, you know, there'll be something else that pops up. But this is right here today, and we could lead the world, we could lead the country.
Yeah.
Right here in New Mexico, what we need is leadership in Santa Fe that says New Mexico not only has the answer, we have the resources.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I absolutely think we're well poised there. We've got a natural resource here, and we really do have a lot of opportunity. It's a matter of taking advantage of it.
Okay, so what's the name of this company?
Biotech.
Biotech, and they're here in Albuquerque.
Yes, sir.
Now, have they generated new facility?
So interesting enough, they're building their equipment in Farmington, New Mexico.
Good deal.
Yeah, so it's definitely a win-win.
Oh, it is,
because it's economic development in the state, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the state, with a goal of decarbonizing transportation.
Ryan, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Think the winning team here tonight will be the last 6A team in the playoffs. It's picked off. Nothing but green in front. Touchdown, Monsanto.
Tight. Hope it warms up a little.
Rolling looking, he's got some daylight in front of him at the 10, the 5. He's going to go into the end zone for the touchdown.
Get extra yards like that.
The Isaac Chavez in motion. Pavia fires down the middle, and it's Rodriguez to the 5, and he's in. Touchdown.
Throwing it in the end zone. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Cowboys.
Joseph, look out! And he's gone. Forget about it. LaShawn Joseph with a house call. Touchdown, Sandia.
The winner gets to take with them, or in Western's case, keep it here. Zell Price will return. Catches it on the goal line. Price has got a little crease. One man to beat. Price might be gone. Price is in the open field and will score on a 98-yard kickoff return. Zell Price had Eastern New Mexico 32-yard line. Fowler in the gun, pump fake to Colson. He's got him open. Colson with the move at the 10. He'll go in for the touchdown. 32-yard touchdown pass.
Malik comes out wide to the left this time on 2nd down and 10. They're going to throw it out to him. Up the sideline he goes. Malik is off to the races. Ain't nobody going to catch him. It's 6-0 the Clovis Wildcats. Been a touchdown, but in any event, it's 4th and 10. Rolling, looking, throws it out, incomplete. Ball will go over on downs with 1:11 to go, and for the first time this year, New Mexico Highlands will be in the victory position, victory kneel down position.
And look at this shot out of a cannon. All the way is Gallegos for his 3rd touchdown tonight.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of ProView Sports Network.
Welcome back to The Point with Mick Rich. In the first segment, we talked about energy, talked about the environment, but most of all talked about how people are getting wealthy and rich at the expense of others with the idea that they're protecting the environment, and they're really not. We're talking about the energy in New Mexico, how important it is, not just for our state, our country, but for the world. And then lastly, what's the future in New Mexico? And it has to do with energy. It has to do with technology, and we have both of them right here. But what I want to talk on this last segment here with my good buddy, Ryan Davis. And Ryan, what we're going to talk about is how do we turn around our state? We're at the bottom of every list in the country, whether it's crime, education, plentiful, good-paying jobs. It's frustrating to me. Our young people are leaving the state for opportunities elsewhere. I've found that when I ask people this question, everybody's got a different idea of what that looks like. What are the top 3 things you think our state could do to turn it around?
Well, I think you touched on one of them, and I think that is, we've got a lot of our youth leaving the state. We're not retaining, folks that a lot of times get educated here and want to go somewhere else. So I think trying to retain those folks. In terms of what that looks like, what it takes to retain them, I think you also touched on, the need for plentiful, good paying jobs. I think that's one thing that would retain folks here in New Mexico. I think we're setting on a lot of opportunities. We talked in the last segment about the biotech, and I think there's a lot of other startup companies here in the Albuquerque area. And we've talked a little bit about energy. Oil and gas, is an industry that provides plentiful and good paying jobs. So
right. So one of the things you talked about was technology, having it here, things coming together, off we go. And I can't help but, and people think about this, the guy that started up Google, but we're talking about some industries that came here. Some of the wealthiest people in the world started here in Albuquerque.
Right.
And they left.
Right.
So the question that I have is, how do we keep those? I mean, they start here and they leave.
Right.
I mean, we've actually, in some instances, driven them out of the state. So what's your thoughts? How do we keep those companies here? and not chaining them, right, handcuffing them to stay in the state, but say, want them to stay here.
Yeah, you know, I this a little bit out of my
I know
my
it
realm,
is.
but you know, I think you mentioned some other areas. You know, the first thing that pops into my head is, you know, maybe there's some tax reform that needs to occur. You know, that really incentivizes company to want to set up shop here and stay here. You know, a lot of times you could see a company leave somewhere because they're looking for, you know, better tax structure for their business. You know, one of the things that I've been kind of curious about is, you know, Silicon Valley and the fact that you've had a lot of people that, you know, flock to that area. And I think, you know, when I look at that and think about it, it seems to be an opportunity for collaboration. You know, it's you're putting a lot of the same like-minded folks in one area, so there's a lot of collaboration going on. I think when we look at New Mexico, there could be an opportunity for that collaboration, you know, in the energy sector. We've got that here. We you know, we have the ability. We just got to figure out how to, you know, get folks to collaborate and have a discussion.
I hear you. So what? You know, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but to take with that run there is what you're saying. What you're acknowledging is, number one is that we have high tech here. We have Los Alamos, we have Sandia, huge amount of high tech. Number two is that we have New Mexico, down there in Socorro, where you graduated from, New Mexico Tech.
Yes, sir.
That's huge when you look at it. And if I remember right, their chemical engineering program is really geared to energy, right? I mean, that's like, I went to Oregon State, chemical engineering there was geared towards pulp and paper.
Right.
Right, because of that industry. So you take that, you take what you talked about was the hydrogen fuel cells.
Yes, sir.
You take that, you take the energy, you take the technology you have, the short-term solution to energy. You throw in Los Alamos with the atomic energy, pull that in for long-term energy. We have an ability to drive the country for cheap, affordable, clean energy for
yes,
long term. We could be and use that instead of denying it, which we're doing right now. We're saying we want nothing to do with it. It's bad. But when you look at it and you say, what's good? How do we make it good? How do we bring those together? That's really your industry and what your company, and I think about your company, it's huge because that's what you're doing with this hydrogen, is that you're taking technology, existing technology, new technology, taking the engineering side of it, putting it together, manufacturing, taking the resources that we have now to create something that's huge. And I grew up in the San Francisco area, and I recall when Hewlett-Packard and where they started from there, and I lived in Palo Alto for a short period of time. I've seen that come together.
Right.
And what it is, that it is bringing people together,
right.
That leadership, instead of rejecting it all,
right.
The true leader takes it and runs with what we've got and say, here's how we're going to build on this even greater.
Right. Well, I think one of the issues there is I think we tend to pick winners and losers before we really set out on a journey to see, you know, what's going to float to the top. And I think that's one of the things that we could do here, you know, is really look at an all of the above type energy approach. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think anything we can do to try to diversify is a good thing. But I don't think you should be picking the winners and losers right now. I think, you know, we need to look at all the resources that we have, and we've talked about hydrogen, and I do think, you know, we're an oil and gas company, but this hydrogen fuel cell and hydrogen powered vehicles really is an opportunity, I think, to kind of revolutionize, the gas resource that we have here in the state and be able to utilize it to decarbonize transportation.
It's huge. And
Yes, sir.
what you also tied on to was our state has a tendency to pick winners and losers. You started with it earlier in the session, was about oil and gas, coal paying huge amount of taxes, where the solar and wind do not. So you're paying you're a huge amount. Then at the same time, tongue in cheek, are you getting any freebies from the Hollywood? And the answer was no. But the state is again picking winners and losers. They're taking money from here and putting it there. They're picking winners and losers. The same thing goes true for when we talk about looking at methane gas, looking at it as a whole, not just one industry. It goes back to, it's not about picking winners and losers. It's about treating people, and I'm a firm believer in this. I believe, I know you, I've met you, just recently met you.
Yes, sir.
But chatted with you on the phone, talked with the folks over at the company, and it's clear to me they look at everybody equally.
Yes, sir.
Treat everyone equally.
Yes, sir.
The fact is that that's what our state needs to get back to.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, one thing that we've talked about throughout the segments here is with methane specifically. The oil and gas industry was called out specifically, and there are other industries in New Mexico that contribute to methane emissions. And so, again, to me, that looks like you're picking on one guy, or one segment here. It is, been shown to be one of the largest sources in New Mexico, but there are other sources. So again, I think, it's dangerous to try to pick winners and losers. And, I'm very surprised with, how important I see oil and gas in our day-to-day lives and
Right.
ultimately to the state. It's a very critical piece to the budget. So you're always surprised that we feel under attack to some degree, or singled out to some degree. So,
well, the old saying goes is you're not paranoid if they're actually after you, right?
Yeah.
But as we wrap this up, and we've been talking about energy, something for us to remember is that since Jimmy Carter was president 40 some odd years ago, we have been talking about being energy independent.
Yes, sir.
And we finally are. For our listeners, our viewers, they've never had to wait in line. You never had to wait in line.
No, sir.
For an hour to get a tank of gas.
Right.
I have seen companies struggle to stay in business because they couldn't get fuel to operate their fleet and do their business.
Right.
I've seen us go to war, lose our young men and women over trying to protect our energy sources.
Correct.
We can't give this up. This is what we have. We can't give it up. It's not that we don't have a future. We have a great future ahead of us.
Absolutely.
But we got to treat people equally.
Yeah.
Hey, great having you here. Thank you very much.
Yes,
what
sir.
a great day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is Mick Rich, To The Point.